Corruption is a big disease in this country. In Kenya, we are very clear that once we take power, we will ensure that the Anti-Corruption Commission is up and running. We need to appoint the right people to run that department. The Treasury has confirmed that almost a third of its revenue is lost through corruption, about 300 to 400 billion shillings. And that one we really need to address as a government.
So what measures will you put in place?
My party leader, Martha Karua, had to resign when he felt that there was corruption in the government. The practical measures that we are going to do is to ensure, first of all, that we ensure that commission is up and running. All civil servants who are working will be vetted in all departments, and it's also the duty of Kenyans that we should also avoid corrupt practices, especially when we are bribing the police. We need to do police reforms. It cuts across the whole society. We have those plans, and we are going to ensure that we have a corrupt-free government once we take power.
All right.
Governance is a big challenge to this country. I have been in public life now for 28 years, and I have seen it all. It is real, it is bad, it cannot be tolerated. We have made it clear within the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy that the time for real action against corruption will start with the next government. And some of us have tried to demonstrate by example that you can be a leader and remain above board. So rather than we will not have to resign, we just have to do. Somebody has to do something, because Kenyans now have reached a stage where they cannot believe you and me when we say we are going to fight corruption, because it is just the way it is. Now, I want to challenge the church and other faith organizations, with your permission, that this time of campaigns, big money is being thrown around. And I've not heard the church come out to say, if you get 1,000 shillings to vote, you are already selling your conscience. And I think this is a time to begin to act in terms of national values, to begin to say no to corruption, because no single individual can actually fight and win the war against corruption. But it has really to come into our psyche, and this is what CORD is determined to do. In fact, within the first 100 days, there must be change on governance.
Honorable Kalonzo, just when you were starting, you said you have been in government for 28 years, and now we are asking what practical measures will your administration put in place to deal with issues of integrity and corruption? So what do you think you're going to do differently that you haven't had the opportunity to do in the 28 years?
The commitment, the urge, because you are armed with all the facts. For instance, it is obvious, the saying goes that he who pays the piper calls the tune. And at this time of electioneering, the first thing we are trying to do is not to get money from dirty hands, because that is already happening. You get people getting money from drug barons and others, and then moving on. Now, the moment you get into leadership, you begin from a position of having been compromised. So, really, this is the difference. And there's going to be a real change with regard to this matter of governance.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about elections and money running around. That would make me ask you, so who's funding your campaign? Do you have people funding your campaign from outside?
Well, yes.
And do you owe them any allegiance?
We do have friends. We have friends, but you have also to vet them. As I said, there can be friends who come with huge sums of money, but you will be expected to pay, either in kind or something. That is what now begins to bring corruption on the table, particularly when you take over as president or deputy president. I'm very clear about this. That's why I said, out of my 28 years experience in public life, I can almost certainly tell you who is corrupt here and there, at that level, big business and other people. We know them. It is just that there's been lack of will, political will, to fight corruption. And this is what you're determined to do in CORD.
All right. Honorable Ochuodo, your thoughts on the same issue, the practical measures.
Madam Moderator, corruption is not just in the public sector alone. It's a problem in the civil society. Some people call it evil society. It is a problem in the church. Some churches, not all, I think the majority of churches, religious institutions are doing well, but there are a few. It's also a problem in the private sector. And integrity is not just theft of money alone. Integrity has got also to do with lying. It's not good enough just to say we stand against corruption. We are hoping the moderator will help. Ask our colleagues how much on a daily basis they are spending on daily campaigns and where that money is coming from. Safina government, one of the least resourced. We haven't had those flamboyant campaigns because we can't just afford it. I would want to state that a Safina government will firmly deal with corruption, and in particular we'll begin at looking at our debt register. We know we've spent huge amounts of money, about 10 billion, to procure equipment, ICT equipment for police communication systems, which we have paid is not there. Railways bought 7 billion shillings, which we have repaid, but there's no single kilometer of road. Safina government will look at the debt registry to make sure that the 50,000 shillings that every Kenyan, even a one-day-old Kenyan, owes, we only pay what was not obtained fraudulently. What was obtained fraudulently will get to account. And I must mention our chairman is in forensics, Mwalimu Mati, is an expert in this. He's been combing with a toothpick. So we'll make sure that all public resources are properly utilized and there will be no witch hunting. Because we also know there are a number of Kenyans who have been called all manner of names, but that is improving with the improved judiciary. So we will strengthen the judiciary, the prosecution arm of government, so that justice and truth prevail.
I noticed when you were talking, you kept saying some churches, some people. It's sort of like you were avoiding to be specific, and that is one of the problems that we are facing. Do you think we should name and shame the people who are involved in corruption?
I should think so. I think, although it's good
then
enough...
maybe you should start by naming who you were talking about.
No, I think it's good enough that the law requires, of the Economic Crimes Act requires of public officers to declare their wealth publicly. And one of our leaders has done that, and that's commendable. Safina government will go a step further. It's good enough to declare wealth, but it's even more important, and this is one thing the former head of the Anti-Corruption Commission tried to do without success, that people need to account for every penny that they have. We know salaries of public officers. We know how much profit people make from businesses. The monies we see floating around cannot be from clean business or from employment. People need to account for their resources. How did they make profit? So Safina will insist on particularly public officers accounting for their wealth.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Onono.
Thank you very much. When I talk about corruption, that is our strongest point. And why it makes me believe that we are going to win this election is this way. Our pillar is that we don't talk about we are going to create jobs, we are going to fight corruption. Kenyans are used to those stories of Tom and Mary. It's just the same stories. We are talking about how. Let's not talk about we are going to fight corruption. How? And I'll start straight to the point. The first thing we are going to do is like we have piled a lot of plates that have not been washed, and we keep on piling. We have commissions of inquiry. And I'll tell you today, from Dungu report to Goldenberg to Anglo leasing, the fact that Mwalimu, President-elect Abdu Badida, is corrupt-free, he does not owe anybody any cent in this country. I can say that maybe I only owe help of some money, which I'll pay. But I'm telling you that when we get into power, we are going to deal with every commission of inquiry the way it comes. Goldenberg, whether you are dead or alive, your family is there. The money is not dead. It is in the account. We give you 3 days. Give us our money or we freeze your account. We move to Anglo leasing. We do the same. We go to the other thing I cannot talk about, which is the issue of land. It is reserved. But this is what you're going to do. We go to Grand Regency. We deal with that. We go to the maize scandal. We deal with that. And that is what we are going to do in our next government. And I'm going to tell you one thing. In the next 100 days, Kenyans will say, we have already voted for you in the other 5 years. So just pass a bill in parliament that you're going to be in power for 10 years. Thank you.
When you say you're going to deal with it, are you talking about dealing with it within the rule of law? What exactly do you mean by deal with it?
Dealing with it means that the commissions of inquiry have already done their jobs. These are judges who have sat down. They have spent millions of our money sitting down, judging all this, and then they come with recommendations. And these recommendations are just taken and put below the table. Any corruption deal, it is put below the table. So Kenyans are used to, the moment they hear commission of inquiry, everybody goes off. We are used to commissions of inquiry. But us, we want to implement what is written in the commission of inquiry. And that is what makes me very confident of winning these elections. If Kenyans can just close their eyes, vote number 1, Mohamed Abdu Badida, Joshua Dongo Nono. We are going to do
Thank
this
you for that.
in the first 100 days.
Time. If we could just move on, Ronnie Osumba would like to find out your thoughts regarding this issue.
I believe that the issue and topic of corruption has been made a token conversation. That we have this conversation to sound right. We do not have the will, and we do not have the right structures to deal with corruption. It continues to bleed our economy. It continues to take away from funds that we could use in healthcare, in improving healthcare, funds that we could use in improving our infrastructure, funds that we could use to educate our children. And it is wrong. We must stop it. A Peter Kenneth administration is going to be firm on corruption. We must be tough on corruption. We must jail any corrupt individuals quickly. We will encourage the reform process that Dr. Mutunga is taking place in the judiciary, that we can be able to expedite corruption cases quickly. The issue of corruption cases lasting in our courts for 5, 10, 20 years must come to an end. We must get rid of corrupt elements within government. We must not have mercy. We must not retain a place for any corrupt elements within our government. I am disturbed that, with all due respect to the Vice President, that for 28 years, we are saying that we now must be more serious and must take more keen attention to corruption. Corruption has been with us for all this time. I am of the opinion that we do not have the will in the political class today as it exists today. We need fresh leadership that has fresh impetus to deal with corruption. But I also must say this, that corruption begins now. And I think Daktari has alluded to it, that we need to interrogate how the campaigns are being funded. We need to interrogate where the funds for all the helicopters in the air are coming from. We need to interrogate where the money for all the branding that we are seeing on television, radio, and on billboards is coming from.
So we will start with Eagle Alliance. We are interrogating.
And I will tell you, the funders of these campaigns will hold those governments, the governments will be beholden to the funders of the campaigns. We have said time and again, our campaign is open. We are receiving donations, small donations from Kenyans. You know, I will tell you, we published our M-Pesa number for donations, and we received a lot of tongue lashing and ridicule from our opponents on social media and other quarters that we are a broke campaign, have run out of funds, and now want to start collecting money from Kenyans. This is the way to kill corruption. We must let Kenyans own their governments. We must let Kenyans fund campaigns through public coffers and directly through campaigns.